Please share your thoughts in comments and like this video. The story begins with a strange family living at the border of the kingdom of Dil Grande. The husband, warrior Lloyd Blanc, lives with 3 women. His wife, Evelise, whose true identity is the most terrifying dragon queen, his eldest daughter, Alice, who is the daughter of the demon king, killed by Lloyd, and his second daughter, Sophia, commonly known as the Witch of Calamity, a genius sorceress. This family was created by the mischief of a god, and this is the story of that family. The flashback begins when Lloyd is battling the demon king. He stands in front of him, lifting his knife to kill him. Even on his deathbed, the demon king was impressed by how Lloyd defeated an army of thousands single-handedly. The demon king expressed that Lloyd's power was beyond the realm of humans and comparable to God, or perhaps even surpassing God. He further explained that after defeating the demon king and losing his purpose in life, people would have nowhere to go, and they would be afraid of him, seeing him as a threat to the world. The demon king encouraged Lloyd to be ready for that and to kill him. He was satisfied, as his death would also start the fall of the warrior. But Lloyd didn't care even one bit. The demon king bid farewell to him, and then Lloyd killed him. This whole event is being watched by someone behind a boulder. She was none other than the daughter of the demon king. The demon king's servant urged the princess to hide, fearing that the hero might see her. Now the demon king had been defeated. She was the last hope of the demon race. The princess screamed father when he was killed and vowed that she will definitely kill Lloyd someday. Half a year later, in Dilgrand Kingdom at Dilgrand Palace, there were groups of people who commented that brave Lloyd was the hero who had saved the country. They acknowledged that despite his commoner background, he was very talented. Some even wondered if he had a partner and expressed their desire to be his wife. Lloyd Blanc greeted His Majesty, and then the king expressed gratitude and congratulated him for defeating the demon king and asked him to raise his head. He then inquired if the wound from the battle with the demon king had been healed. In response, Lloyd confirmed that it had indeed healed. He conveyed to the king that it is his honor to receive His Majesty's words of praise. Then he thanked him for giving Holiday with huge bonuses which would make him completely healed. The king exclaimed it was a well-deserved reward for the hero who saved the country. He then informed Lloyd that the reason he had called him was to entrust a part of his territory to him. This announcement left Lloyd wondering about receiving territory as a commoner. The king made a formal proclamation and granted brave Lloyd the title of Count of the Frontier. He also mentioned that he had prepared a mansion for Lloyd, but something had happened. In the east of Rodmaya, where he is given to Lloyd, there are many good quality iron mines, but in the last few years terrifying monsters have come to live there. He had sent the elite army to subjugate them, but no one returned. The king conveyed to Lloyd that he did not want any more losses and therefore requested him to deal with those monsters. In response, Lloyd agreed and assured the king that he would take care of that matter. He left the castle after saying that. The king felt relieved after Lloyd left, but the king's assistant wondered whether it would be all right. The territory given to Lloyd is a barren land where crops hardly grow. So she worried about Lloyd complaining about it, but the king knew it wouldn't happen. The king further explained that Lloyd is satisfied as long as he's alive. He also conveyed that it was staying in that land, referring to the Dragon King. The Dragon King was said to be immortal and had the ability to destroy a whole country in just one night, and even the Demon King couldn't handle her. She was described as the supreme being of dragons, far beyond Lloyd's capabilities. The king's assistant wondered if the king was pushing the hero to his death. The king responded that he wanted Lloyd to be dead with an angry face. From the very beginning, the king intended to let Lloyd and the Demon King kill each other, but compared to the Demon Lord, Lloyd is just too strong. He doesn't need that kind of power. The king further clarified that the assassination of the Demon King turned Lloyd into a warrior, and now that his mission was over, the power to save the world could one day become the power to destroy the world. Therefore, they needed to eliminate the hero. The king stated that the warrior had no use now, so they needed to eliminate him to avoid any future troubles. 1 month later, in the suburbs of Rodmaya, Lloyd felt that it had been a month since he started riding in the carriage. He pondered whether he had been forgotten and kicked out of his country. Observing the lack of vegetation in the area, he wondered if there might be a giant monster living there. Lloyd thought to himself that the king had been afraid of him, which is why he was sent to this desolate region. He reflected on whether this situation was the result of the decision made that day. In a flashback, someone had asked Lloyd if he was going to participate in the body modification experiment, to which he had answered in the affirmative. He also reminisced about his childhood, where he had been avoided by everyone and his parents had died early. He had desired to be helpful to others and regain people's attention. With that motivation, he had voluntarily agreed to the experiment. It had successfully completed and Lloyd gained overwhelming power. He was the only one who survived after many failures. However, this power led to him losing his purpose. After defeating the Demon King, he lost the reason to exist. He felt discarded like an unnecessary entity. Lloyd also questioned the meaning of his life. A cart rider informed Lloyd that there was no grass to feed the horse, and they couldn't proceed with the ride from that point. Lloyd understood the situation as the cart rider is afraid of monsters there. Lloyd thanked the cart rider for the ride. Lloyd decided to walk the remaining distance. Meanwhile, the cart rider was driving the horse at full speed. He wanted to stay away from places like this. Suddenly, he heard a loud sound and turned back. The dropped hero was nowhere in sight and wondered where the hero might have disappeared to. Lloyd reached Mount Rodbyre and entered the tunnel. He had only brought a flashlight, but he believed it would suffice. He wondered about the kind of monster that could inhabit a large space like this. Suddenly, a voice called out, inquiring about his purpose for being there. A dragon emerged from the tunnel, identifying itself as the Dragon King's and questioning if Lloyd intended to confront it. Lloyd was amazed by its size and wondered how the dragon had entered such a place. The Dragon King demanded an answer from Lloyd and teased him whether he was too scared to speak. But Lloyd had forgotten the word scared long ago. He confidently mentioned that this mountain doesn't belong to the dragon. It was a part of the Dilgren Kingdom. The Dragon King warned Lloyd to run away if he valued his life, but Lloyd disagreed, stating that he was following the king's orders. The Dragon King found Lloyd interesting and prepared to attack with fire. However, Lloyd resisted the fire with what he called an energy barrier, surprising the Dragon King. Lloyd explained that he was quite special, with a body that was already broken. In response, the Dragon King threatened to trample Lloyd to pieces if his fire didn't work. Lloyd stopped the dragon's attack with one hand, leaving the dragon impressed by Lloyd's strength. Lloyd decided to end the conversation and threw away his weapon, because he didn't need that in the first place. He punched the Dragon King with his bare hand, causing the dragon to collapse and crash into rocks at a distance. Then Lloyd moved forward to confront the dragon. The Dragon King, now fearful, gazed at Lloyd. Lloyd couldn't help but think about the countless people who had seen him in fearful eyes during his life. Lloyd asks the Dragon King to leave the place. If he did, he won't chase him. But the Dragon King replied that she will never surrender to the humans, so she asked Lloyd to kill him. Then Lloyd intended to ask the Dragon King one last question: why the Dragon King didn't fight seriously. Both of the dragon's attacks can be dodged quite easily if he stepped back. But if he did that, he would be forced to go outside of the tunnel. Lloyd inquired whether the Dragon King did not want to kill him, or he can say that she only wanted to drive people away and not want to kill them. Lloyd wondered whether the soldiers ran away for fear of being punished. The dragon criticized Lloyd for being delusional and asked him to kill her. Lloyd clarified that the king ordered him to kill the monster so there aren't any more losses. Since the dragon didn't cause any damage, that order doesn't exist. The Dragon King was shocked to see Lloyd sparring her. The corpses of dragons were the equivalent of a mountain of treasure. She thought Lloyd wanted her corpse at any cost. Lloyd agreed with her. He could buy a whole country with her corpse, but he doesn't care about such things. Lloyd explained that he had killed so many people. Now he did not want unnecessary killing. The Dragon King inquired about his situation. Lloyd replied that he was a warrior. Under the king's order, he single-handedly defeated the Demon King, and now he has been considered to be a threat to humans. Exiled also knew the order to kill the dragon was actually for them to kill each other. But the Dragon King wondered why he didn't refuse that order after knowing all that. Lloyd laments he had nothing, neither lover or family. He only has this power. If he was not the tool they needed, Lloyd believed he would be just a meaningless existence, and he hated that. Then Lloyd said to the dragon that if he wanted to stay here, he could, and said farewell to him, then started to leave the place. The Dragon King asked him to stop and suggested an idea. Then the Dragon King transformed into human and introduced herself as Evelise. Lloyd wondered if the Dragon King was actually a girl. Then Evelise asked about Lloyd's origins, and then she requested him to come and live with her. It was a sudden proposal between those two races. The cruel dragon turns into a gorgeous lady. Lloyd stares at her. Evelise wonders whether Lloyd is mesmerized by her beauty and even explains that humans can't resist a beauty like her. But unexpectedly, Lloyd now understood how Evelise managed to get through the tunnel. Upon hearing his words, she was shocked that he didn't care about her beauty and also didn't feel emotions or anything. Then he inquired about living together with her. She replied that he doesn't have any family and got shy. Lloyd didn't want to force Evelise to speak, so he won't ask again and started to leave. Evelise asked him to wait and stopped him. She revealed she wanted to be his wife. She gathered her courage and proposed, but Lloyd accepted it without a second thought, nonchalantly. Evelise asked him whether he understood, then he replied that mate means husband and wife. Evelise started to explain that if some person helped them, they should form an alliance or to be their mate for the rest of their lives according to their law. But Lloyd agreed to that since fulfilling all requests is the only way for a tool. Lloyd stated that there is a mansion nearby and they can start to live there, but Evelise said that he need to know about her before he take decision. She started to explain that dragons once lived here. One day she saw a man nearby and she helped him out of a moment of kindness. The person fully recovered after that. He was not afraid of dragons, and to thank her for her help, he offered to make friends. His country also welcomed them, and a temporary friendship was established. They helped their trades and keep an eye on their countries. The country soon became prosperous and peaceful, but those days have gone soon. One day, the humans presented the minerals they liked a lot. As usual, the dragons ate it without knowing that the humans started to show off their true colors. They drugged the poison in the food and killed the dragon kind for their treasure. After achieving prosperity, humans don't need their protection anymore. The land they lived, their flesh and blood, was their aim. After seeing her kind death before her eyes, she lost her reason and she doesn't have any memories after that incident. When she regained her senses, everything was on fire. At that time, Evelise wondered whether the commoners knew about the plan to kill them. At least she knew that the children had nothing to do with that. Then the forest was fully destroyed due to fire. Till now it has only been a barren land. Since then, she got the name the Cruel Dragon King. She kept herself alone because it must be a suitable punishment for letting her kind die and implicating those unrelated. She also stated that Lloyd didn't kill her even though he has the power. She was also tired of this punishment of being lonely. Lloyd, who has killed many people and been fearful in everyone's eyes, is the most suitable suitor for her, so she asked him to live with her. Lloyd agreed suddenly, which shocked her. She wondered whether Lloyd even listened to her story. Lloyd stated that fulfilling the request is always his way to live, so he will give his life to complete Evelise's request and agreed to make her his wife. Evelise got happy upon hearing his words, and with happy tears, she called Lloyd her husband. Then Lloyd asked her how she changed her attitude with a glimpse. She replied that it was an act to scare him away. Then he took Evelise away, using his flying magic. She wondered where he might take her to. Then he reached the place. He said to her that this was their home, and even stated that hereafter they are going to live here as husband and wife. Lloyd asked her to choose a room from the house. Then Evelise asked him to call her by the nickname Eve. But she was curious whether Lloyd was always emotionless like that. Well, he was doing his best. Eve asked Lloyd to make her smile a lot more since they are a couple now. In Lloyd's mansion bedroom, Lloyd was thinking about how long the day had been and questioned whether having a family was the reason for him to live. He also pondered if someone like him, who couldn't protect their loved one, deserved this situation. Eve called Lloyd and he asked her to come in. She inquired if they could sleep together and remarked that it was the first night of theirs. As usual, dense Lloyd agreed without a second thought. Eve climbed the bed and asked Lloyd to be gentle with her. The Dragon Queen has now become a wife. The next morning arrived and a loud sound echoed throughout the mansion. Lloyd was washing his face. Eve was striking the ground with anger a little distance away from him. In the end, Lloyd inquired why she was banging around for a while. Eve criticized that it was their first night. He didn't do anything, even though they were in the same bed. Lloyd mentioned that he couldn't believe he had slept so soundly, and even though they had slept together, it didn't feel tight at all. Eve pointed out that she wasn't talking about the bed. She expressed her frustration and inquired why Lloyd hadn't taken a certain action. In response, Lloyd asked what she had wanted him to do and apologized, requesting her to tell him. Eve pointed out they should engage in intimate acts between husband and wife. Lloyd reacted in a confused manner. Evelise inquired about his reaction and asked him whether he knew about it. Lloyd replied that he knows about it and answered to her that it happens between a couple in love. She then asked him if he loved her. Eve flustered at that. She inquired whether it was the law of humans, but she lied she didn't know about that. Since Eve wanted it, Lloyd believed it was his duty to satisfy her as her husband. So he agreed to do mating right there. Upon hearing his speech, she ran away from that place. She became flustered in the end and came to a decided, since their marriage has been decided by law of dragons, so she decided to follow the law of humans about mating and plans to postpone their first night till they fall in love. Lloyd agreed and made a deal with her. Eve said to Lloyd that she will prepare food, which the wife would usually do, and left that place. Lloyd thinks that being a husband is a lot harder than fighting the demon lord. After some time, Eve returned home. She brought a rock and a dead chicken to serve him. To Lloyd's confusion, Eve explained that it is her favorite food. Besides, she gave him a dead chicken from that area and asked him to eat it. Lloyd bute the minerals and broke it, but it wasn't edible to him. He can't swallow the rocks, and Eve found that the humans can't eat minerals. Then she asked him to eat the fresh chicken. Upon her request, he tasted the chicken and said to her that the chicken was undercooked. So she uses her fire magic to fix the food, but it was burned due to overheat. But she didn't know about that and asks Lloyd to eat the chicken. But he tasted it and exclaimed it was delicious, even though it tasted bad. Eve got happy upon hearing his words. She then decided to taste the chicken. After a while, Eve shouted that the chicken was too bad, but Lloyd liked the taste. He comforted her by saying nice words like, her efforts makes her cooking delicious. But Lloyd laments he can't swallow minerals his wife made for him. Eve gets flustered and thinks that her husband is a delicate man, and she can't let such a man eat something bad. She wanted to cook a meal that satisfies her husband, which is related to her pride as a wife. So Eve asked Lloyd about what she missed in that food. Lloyd indicates it was salt, and Eve realizes she had missed out seasoning. She asked him where she could get them. Lloyd revealed there was a town which may take 2 days by walking from there. But for Eve, it will only take 30 minutes because of her flying ability, so she prepared to go to town. Lloyd stopped her because she needed money to buy things. He wondered whether she had gone shopping before. Eve then requested Lloyd to accompany her to the shopping with Hope. Lloyd agrees since it's a husband's duty to do what his wife asks. Also, he has some work to do in town, so he takes weapons along with him. Eve tells him to not bring any weapons. But Lloyd knew there must be some robbers on the way, so he plans to bring weapons for protecting them. But Eve rejected his idea by saying his monstrous power is more than enough. Then she mocked him for being silly. She confidently said that there won't be any robbers on the way. He asked her the reason for her confidence, and he soon realized Eve can fly with the help of her wings. Then Eve transformed into a dragon and started to fly after Lloyd sat on her. Eve and Lloyd were excited for shopping as it was their first outing as a married couple. After some time, the couple arrived at the city of Iyan. Lloyd asked Eve to land somewhere to avoid getting caught by people's eyes. He showed nearby forest for cover, and Eve agreed with that. Then Eve turned to her human form in the mid-air, and they both dropped down from the sky. Eve was so excited to go shopping with Lloyd. After entering the city, she gets surprised by seeing those city walls and the market areas. Then Eve spotted a delicious meat, and the shop owner praised her for having a keen eye. To the shop owner's surprise, she took the raw meat without the shop owner's permission and took a bite. She was enjoying that delicious snack, and the shop owner was taken back. He then asked Eve to give him money. Lloyd apologized to the shop owner for her behavior and paid the money for the meat. Lloyd said to the shop owner that his wife was quite strange. Upon hearing his words, Eve couldn't believe someone like Lloyd thinks her being strange. While walking, Lloyd advised Eve to pay before buying anything because it was the rule of the humans, to which she apologized to him as it was her first time buying anything. Lloyd asked her to forget about that. He wanted to look for the necessary seasoning, then they will head home after finishing Lloyd work, to which she agreed upon seeing those big buildings. She got excited and Eve requested Lloyd to look around the place. Lloyd agreed, and the both couples went to the store nearby. Upon entering the stores, they realized that it was a clothing store, and they were welcomed by the staff. Eve selected a new dress and asked Lloyd opinions on it. Lloyd praised her looks in it, and she was happy. She then asked him the same with another dress, and he replied the same. Then she showed him more clothes, but every time Lloyd's answer remained the same. In the end, Eve got angry and asked him whether he was paying any attention. He replied that he just says what he feels. Upon hearing those words, she blushed and went to try the clothes. The staff was excited to see a VIP customer and brought many clothes to try it on. But Eve rejected those as she had seen many things already. Now it was time for them to leave. The staff was utterly disappointed. While leaving, Lloyd wonders why Eve doesn't buy any clothes. Eve explains that her clothes are made of energy, so she doesn't need to buy them. She can just memorize and recreate them later. But Lloyd thinks that the Dragon Queen, the head of the dragon race, is surprisingly stingy. Upon hearing his words, Eve got angry and pinched his face. In the end, even the hero agreed that his wife was thrifty and not stingy, according to Eve's clarification. Since the sun was still high, they decided to look for another round around the city. They enjoyed various aspects of the city, and one time, Eve saw an entertainer breathing fire and thought whether he was their kind. After looking around the city, they bought everything in the market. All those tours made them hungry, so they went into a nearby restaurant where they looked forward to their food. Eve plans to use this chance to learn about human cuisine. The waiter apologized for making them wait and brought them a roasted chicken made by aromatic herbs. Eve tasted the food, which was so delicious, and the meat was well grilled with various seasonings sprinkled on it. Lloyd, with no expression, says delicious, and it was the same expression he had when he ate her burned chicken. She then decided to ignore that, but Eve had no idea about how she could recreate such a good dish. At that time, she overheard a nearby couple talking about how they will add love spice to make it more delicious, and the wife feeds her husband. Upon seeing that, Eve tried to feed Lloyd to make their relationship bright. She took a piece of meat and asked Lloyd to open his mouth, but dense Lloyd refused that, as he was capable of feeding himself. Eve was disappointed once again by Lloyd's lack of reactions and slammed her face on the table. Lloyd wondered why Eve had been acting strange for a while. Poor Eve thought that Lloyd must have been annoyed by her action. She thinks they were only a couple in name, and there was no such thing as love between them. Lloyd asked her if she was all right. Eve apologized and told him that she was tired, so she didn't pay attention to him. Soon they both heard a loud noise which exclaimed whether someone was kidding with him. A thug is attacking the waiters for insulting him and bringing him a cheap wine, where the female waiter was pleading with the thug to stop, and the male waiter was lying on the floor with bleeding mouth. The male waiter was angered and told the thug to let go of his wife, but the man didn't care about that and threw the glass on him. The thug ordered the waiter to give him his money and his wife to forgive him. But the male waiter refused the thug's offer and asked him to let go of his wife. By his words, the thug became angered and started to attack him. Upon seeing that the female waiter screamed for help, Hero Lloyd intervened and blocked the thug's weapon with his bare hand, which shocked the thug. The thug inquired about Lloyd's identity and his interruption. Lloyd replied that he had heard a call for help from someone. If someone asks for help, Lloyd is the type of person who answers that call. The thug tried to withdraw his weapon, but he couldn't even shake it. Then Lloyd asked the thug to release the waiter couple. The thug is shocked by his strength and calls his boys to get rid of him. Soon Lloyd was surrounded by a group of thugs. Lloyd snatched the weapon from the thug and threw it away. That weapon was caught by Eve, who asked Lloyd to not destroy the hotel. The thug's friends believed Lloyd was underestimating them and attacked him. Everyone landed their attacks on him simultaneously and thought that they managed to injure Lloyd seriously. But they didn't notice their broken weapons at that time. Lloyd caught the sword and broke it in that split second with just his bare hands. Lloyd didn't want them to damage the property with those weapons. Lloyd crushed those knives with his bare bands because the knives were too dangerous and shaped it into a ball. Upon seeing that, the thugs were shocked and proclaimed Lloyd as a monster. In a split second, Lloyd defeated the thug's friends. Then Lloyd started to walk towards the thug. The latter got afraid and threatened Lloyd to not come near him by using the waiter's life. But Lloyd didn't care about that. He continued his walk and punched the thug in his face. By Lloyd's strong punch, the thug flies in the air due to his strength and falls out by breaking the door, which caused to lose his teeth and also causes external bleeding in his face. Lloyd casually expressed that he had completed the mission, and he noted that the shop was unharmed. The people in the hotel cheered and praised him for his absolute strength. Eve proudly mentioned that her husband was so strong. At that time, a group of soldiers heard about the thugs and rushed to the hotel. They asked the people if they were all right. Lloyd pointed out the thug outside the hotel and his friends carried by him as culprits. Then he handed them to the soldiers for custody. Soldiers asked Lloyd whether he was the one who knocked them out. After confirming that it was Lloyd, they asked about the Lloyd name for some procedure. He introduced himself as Lloyd Blanc. The soldiers realized that he was the one who defeated the Demon King. The soldiers were glad to meet him and the citizens cheered for the hero. Then Lloyd asked the soldiers to hand over the task completion report to His Majesty, to which the soldier agreed with trembling hands. After Lloyd's identity was exposed, more people rushed to the hotel to see him. Eve got struck among the crowd, and she thought that it was not good to stay there for any longer. She wanted to leave that place soon. Lloyd hesitated because the front door was filled with numerous people. At that time, the male waiter helped him by showing the back door of the hotel. Eve thanked him and asked the waiters whether they were all right. The male waiter exclaimed that he could endure this much pain and thanked them for their help earlier. Lloyd advised the waiter to avoid those jerks because they are not good at fighting and they will only get injured. Upon hearing his expressionless words, Eve asks him to mind his manners. The waiter explained his thoughts. If something bad happened to his wife, it would hurt him more than those injuries, to which Lloyd smiled. Lloyd seems to realize something at that point. Eve told Lloyd that they had been out for too long and suggested that they should go back. A female waiter then gave them a basket of sandwiches as a token of thanks. While heading home, Eve exclaimed that so many things happened today when it was just their second day as a husband and wife. Eve thought about the waiter couples who were real husband and wife. They were not like them who were a couple in name only. By hearing that Lloyd called her and inserted the sandwich into her mouth, Eve tasted the sandwich, which was delicious, but she wondered what Lloyd was doing. When he called Eve, she opened her mouth unconsciously, and Lloyd used that chance to feed her sandwich. He thought that's what a couple will do. Although they were a couple by name, Lloyd wanted to try that with Eve. Upon seeing that Eve thinks that she shouldn't get upset because it's not only her, Lloyd is also trying his best to be a couple. Eve exclaimed that the bread was delicious, to which he agreed. Eve planned to cook some chicken dishes for him upon reaching home. She needs Lloyd to taste and express his opinions on it. Lloyd agreed, and they started to walk while holding their hands. Please like and subscribe to see the future of this couple and how those legends will open their hearts to each other.